Policies that some people thought might reverse under Mark Carney, but in fact have worsened under his leadership. It is more drugs, more costs, more crises, more of the same under Mark Carney's Liberals. And nowhere is this more true than when it comes to food prices, which are in a total and absolute crisis. Prices are rising faster today than they were when Mark Carney took office, promising to lower them.
Canadians were promised relief. Mark Carney entered office saying affordability would be his #1 priority. Instead, families are waking up to a new crisis in the grocery aisle. According to Statistics Canada, food inflation in August reached 3.5%, while the United States registered just 3.2%. That gap may sound small on paper, but in real life it means Canadians pay more for milk, beef, and bread compared to households across the border. This is the reality of everyday life under Carney's Liberals. He said prices would come down. Instead, they continue to rise, pushing households into debt and forcing families to cut back. Coupons, bulk purchases, and skipped meals are becoming the norm. Carney promised affordability. What Canadians got was higher bills at the checkout. The collapse of his affordability narrative is even clearer when we look at carbon pricing. In April 2025, the Carney government removed the consumer carbon tax, claiming this would ease the cost of living. It was sold as a reset, but months later, grocery bills are higher than ever. Industrial carbon pricing still weighs on manufacturers, transportation, and food processors. Even though economists argue the impact of that levy is marginal, less than 1% of overall food inflation, it has become a political trap. If Carney scraps it, the impact is negligible. If he keeps it, he hands the opposition a perfect slogan. That is why Pierre Poilievre's rallying cry to stop taxing groceries resonates across the country. Carney lost control of the debate. What was supposed to be a flagship affordability policy has backfired, leaving him exposed on one of the most sensitive political battlegrounds. Beyond the policy debates, the pain is real. Beef prices surged over 7% compared to last year, the result of droughts in 2022 that reduced cattle herds and pushed supply to historic lows. Poultry and eggs remain expensive due to bird flu that devastated production across North America. Transportation, labor shortages, and currency shifts only add more pressure. Experts can argue these are global shocks beyond Ottawa's control. But Canadians do not care about economic textbooks. They care about the number on the receipt. Their wages are flat, their housing costs are up, and now the grocery bill is climbing week after week. While Carney blames external crises, the opposition delivers a message that is short and sharp. Axe the tax. Stop taxing groceries. It may not be a full economic solution, but it is a political weapon that cuts straight into the frustration of ordinary households. Carney points to industrial subsidies, trade missions, and global partnerships as proof he is working to lower costs. He says new deals in Asia or relief loans to steel companies are about affordability. But Canadians do not feel it. What they feel is the daily squeeze when shopping for butter, chicken, or orange juice. The Prime Minister has built his brand on competence, yet on the issue that matters most, he appears powerless. This is Carney's affordability trap. Every promise of relief turns into higher costs. Every intervention turns into another backfire. It is not just an economic failure, it is a political danger. Food prices decide elections. If the numbers keep climbing while the government insists Canadians are better off, the credibility gap will only widen. And in that gap, Carney risks losing not just the grocery debate, but the trust of the very voters he cannot afford to lose.
They want to see if they can refine the trade deal a little bit. We made a deal, and it's a great deal. And I'm into helping them. Our country is doing very well.
Despite Trump's comments, the U.S. is reportedly walking away from plans to end steel and aluminum tariffs in the U.K., raising questions over how the rest of the world could be affected.
The pictures from London say it all. Donald Trump arriving at Chequers, shaking hands with Prime Minister Keir Starmer, ready to refine a trade deal that already gives Britain a privileged seat at the table. The United States has shielded the UK from the worst of its global steel tariffs, sparing them from the crushing 50% levy that the rest of the world must pay. Britain walks away with a capped 25% rate and the promise of a broader framework on technology and energy. Meanwhile, Canada is nowhere to be seen. There are no ceremonies, no warm receptions, no carve-outs. Ottawa, once considered America's closest partner, is suddenly standing outside the room. Under Mark Carney's leadership, Canada is being treated as an afterthought, forced to watch as others secure deals and protections. The American demand is brutally clear. To earn relief, partners must prove that their steel is melted and poured at home, blocking any chance for Chinese material to slip through. For the UK, this is already a serious hurdle, with its producers tied to imports from India and Turkey. For Canada, it is a brick wall. 2/3 of the steel consumed in Canada is imported, much of it from China and other offshore suppliers. The Carney government has no real answer to this challenge. Ottawa can raise tariffs or issue promises, but Washington is demanding verifiable proof that foreign steel is cut out of the chain. That bar is impossibly high for a country so dependent on imports. What America has done is set conditions that Canada cannot meet, ensuring Ottawa will remain trapped under punishing tariffs while allies like the UK negotiate exemptions. Across the Atlantic, the UK joins Europe, Japan, and South Korea in striking frameworks with Washington. Each country gains clarity, each country carves out protections. Canada, by contrast, is left in the shadows. The only path left for Ottawa is to beg for sector-by-sector concessions. Aluminum is seen as a possible opening, but even there progress is slow. Steel is a deadlock, with Canada's dependence on imports leaving no credibility at the table. Pharmaceuticals add yet another headache, as the United States zeroes in on Canada's drug pricing system and generic exports. The contrast is glaring. While Trump secures high-profile meetings and agreements abroad, Carney's Canada is reduced to damage control, scrabbling to patch holes while industries at home bleed competitiveness. The image is one of a country shoved to the sidelines, humiliated in full view of its people and its trading partners. The outcome is devastating. Trump emerges with a stronger hand, using tariffs as leverage to dictate terms and cut China out of supply chains. The UK, Europe, and Asia all find ways to adapt. Canada finds only rising costs and stalled negotiations. Factories depending on affordable steel and aluminum face shrinking margins. Construction projects already battered by high interest rates now face higher input costs. Thousands of jobs tied to metals and manufacturing are at risk, and communities that depend on those industries are bracing for the worst. Yet Carney offers little more than vague reassurances. The reality is unmistakable. Canada has lost its priority status, downgraded to the back of the line. Unless there is a dramatic shift in policy to reduce dependence on imports, the country will remain on the receiving end of America's trade hammer. For Canadian workers and families, that means higher prices, lost jobs, and the prospect of even deeper pain ahead.
Meantime, the tariffs continue to cause chaos for Canadian businesses, particularly in the manufacturing sector. A stainless steel pipe plant in Brockville says business is dropping significantly.
So the problem is that, Canada now has nowhere else for its steel to go when it gets displaced from these other countries. So they look to the southern market, they look to the US.
Canada's steel industry has been cornered like never before. Once dominant at home, Canadian mills now control only a fraction of their own market, with cheap imports from Asia and steady flows from the United States overwhelming local production. For years, Canadian producers coped by exporting millions of tons south, but Trump's reciprocal tariffs at 50% have shut that door completely. It is a double blow. Canada has lost its home field advantage and at the same time been locked out of its most vital export market. Trump set the rules of the game and Ottawa is left reacting, scrambling, and falling further behind. The fallout is everywhere. Big players like Zekelman Industries warn that once-strong companies are collapsing under the pressure. Some firms have already shut down mills and let hundreds of workers go, unable to withstand either the flood of cheap imports or the weight of American tariffs. Smaller plants tell the same story, only with fewer safety nets. In Brockville, a stainless steel pipe plant has shrunk its workforce by nearly half in just 3 years. Sales that once reached $40 million now barely clear $17 million. Families who depended on steady factory wages are suddenly left without answers, and communities that relied on industrial jobs are hollowing out. The human cost runs deeper than balance sheets. Each lost job means a mortgage at risk,
a small business with fewer customers, a community center with fewer donations. The steel industry was once a ladder to the middle class in towns across Ontario and beyond. Now that ladder is being kicked away. With Ottawa slow to react, many families are left wondering if their children will ever find stable work in manufacturing again.
The tragedy is compounded by Canada's own contradictions. While Canadian workers lose their jobs, clean energy projects across the country are being built with foreign steel shipped from halfway around the world. Panels and solar fields marketed as green are supported by some of the dirtiest steel on the planet.
All of those solar fields, so we do the piling that goes into the ground, the screw piles, it's all from China. Here we are trying to make our country green and green power, and we're buying the dirtiest steel in the world. It's really crazy. It's asinine. It's illogical.
It is a cruel irony. The country spends more to import cheap steel for climate projects while its own skilled workforce is sidelined. The supposed savings on material costs are quickly erased by the economic damage, lost jobs, lost tax revenue, and heavier demands on the social safety net. The choice to chase headline prices has left entire towns struggling, and the long-term costs are proving far greater than anyone admitted.
The industry is at a breaking point, and the path out is clear yet politically uncomfortable. Canada must block unfair imports and give its own mills room to supply the domestic market. Only then can the country rebalance trade with the United States and ease the tariff hammer that has devastated exports. Business leaders are pleading for real incentives that make buying Canadian steel worthwhile. Without bold action, promises of support will ring hollow, and more factories will close their doors. The warning signs are flashing. This is a new trade order, driven by Trump's tariffs and global competition. The uncomfortable truth is that Canada has little leverage left. If Ottawa refuses to align with Washington, it risks losing both the US market and its own domestic base. Local managers are calling not just for subsidies, but for a strategy. Incentives to buy Canadian, rules that defend domestic jobs, and a vision that matches the urgency of the crisis. Without it, the country's steel towns face a slow grind toward decline, where every year means fewer jobs, fewer opportunities, and a future slipping further out of reach.
It's a rupture. The U.S. is fundamentally transforming all of its trading relationships, not just with Canada. The effect is profound. It's displacing workers. It's disrupting supply chains. It's causing immense uncertainty that's curbing investment and increasing unemployment. We're over the shock.
Carney's polished speeches could not hide the reality. Canada has just been forced into a cycle of rate cuts, not because of economic strength, but because of the crushing blow from Washington. Trump's reciprocal tariffs have cornered Canada in a way no strategy from Ottawa could prevent. The second quarter numbers made it impossible to ignore. Growth turned negative. Exports to the United States collapsed, erasing the illusion that Canada could ride out this storm untouched. Families are now caught in the middle of a trade fight they never asked for, yet they are the ones paying the heaviest price. Trump framed the tariffs as fairness. In practice, they stripped Canada of its most vital lifeline, cross-border trade. While Trump boasts of American leverage, Carney stands exposed with nothing but hollow promises to cushion the damage. The Bank of Canada had no choice but to slash the key lending rate to 2.5%, the first cut since March. This was not a move of confidence. It was a desperate attempt to soften the blow of a weakening economy. The labor market tells the story better than any speech. In just 2 months, 100,000 Canadian jobs disappeared. Households who once felt secure now face the fear of layoffs and shrinking paychecks. The economic blow is not abstract. It is visible in every factory town and every shipping hub tied to U.S. markets. As an economist from RBC put it, the tariff hit has been very pronounced but concentrated. Certain regions and industries are being gutted, while others watch nervously, knowing they could be next. Instead of a coordinated national response, Carney's government is leaning on monetary policy, leaving the central bank to do the heavy lifting. That is not leadership, it is retreat. Across the border, the picture is very different. The U.S. economy continues to show resilience, even as tariffs filter into consumer prices. Inflation has ticked higher because companies pass costs on to shoppers, but growth is still holding. The Federal Reserve is set to cut rates too, yet their move comes under Trump's relentless political pressure rather than an economic collapse.
Yes, the U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to cut rates. And the interesting thing about that is they probably don't have to. The U.S. economy has been doing okay.
The contrast is striking. Americans are paying more at the checkout line, but Canadians are paying with their jobs. Manufacturing output is shrinking, exports are stalling, and the housing market is clouded by uncertainty. One country shoulders higher prices, the other loses livelihoods. Trump can afford to play hardball because his domestic economy still has strength. Canada, by contrast, is stumbling, reacting instead of leading. Carney's promises of resilience now ring hollow against the hard numbers, and his credibility is slipping fast. What emerges is a clear imbalance of power. Trump sets the rules, Canada scrambles to adapt. Each new tariff pushes Ottawa further into defense mode. Each new job loss chips away at household confidence. And each new cut in rates signals desperation rather than strategy. Carney pledged stability, but the results are brutal: shrinking exports, vanishing jobs, and a government that seems perpetually one step behind events. Canadians are watching their economy falter while the man in Washington tightens the screws. This is not a trade victory for Canada. It is the opposite. Trump has won the upper hand, and Carney's response has backfired. The evidence is on every pay stub, every mortgage statement, and every factory floor. The cost of this failure is measured in lost growth and lost work, and the worst may still lie ahead for Canadian families.